you so much. Hey, thanks so much, Stacy, and thanks for everybody for being here. I just want to take a few minutes to tell you all a little bit about our new graduate certificate in restorative justice. We've just started this up in the last couple of years, and we're really excited. So I'm going to share a little bit of information, and then we'll have plenty of time for people to ask questions, people to make comments. Definitely, you can ask questions and make comments a little bit later, but in the meantime, if as I'm talking, as I'm sharing information, if you have questions you want to put in the chat so that you don't forget about them, definitely feel free to do that. Or you can just like write them down in your notebook in front of you. My name is Ben Almasi. I'm a faculty member here at Governor State, which is just a fancy way of saying that I teach a bunch of different courses. I teach political philosophy, I teach environmental justice, and I'm one of the folks who works together on this graduate certificate in restorative justice. So one of the things that's really exciting just in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, is that there's growing recognition really at all levels of the value of restorative justice, of trying to think about justice, but not in terms of punishment and not necessarily in terms of vengeance, right? But to try to think about justice in terms of repair, repairing our communities after we've wronged each other, and sometimes repairing a person's relationship to themselves. That can be part of restorative justice for an offender, for a perpetrator as well. That's happening here in Chicago. It's happening all across the nation. That's even happening in other countries as well. A growing recognition of the value of restorative justice, but also the need for trained professionals, social workers, criminal justice advocates, other folks who actually have the knowledge, the experience, the skills to put those principles into practice. So some of y'all probably know this even better than I do, but some really exciting things that are happening here closer to home. So the Chicago Public Schools and other school districts all around Chicagoland have started to employ um, restorative justice coordinators. The court system, the Cook County court system, now has more and more restorative justice courts. The juvenile justice system in Illinois has been recognized by the Department of Justice, like the US Department of Justice, as like a leader in using restorative justice for juvenile justice. And those are just things that are happening here in our state. Also, restorative justice, not just something in the schools, although that's really important, not just something in the courts, that's really important too, but also something that's put into practice in our communities, right? It doesn't have to be through a formal institution, although it has a really real value there. It can also be something we do within our communities. So those of you who live on the South Side might be familiar, for example, with Precious Blood Ministries. This is a great community organization that puts restorative justice into practice. So we've started a graduate certificate program here at Governor State, which seeks to bring together our faculty's expertise in restorative justice with other approaches to justice in philosophy, in social work, in criminal justice, in political science. And we do this in a way where we do this in the classroom, but we also do this out in the field. So part of what we're trying to do in this 1-year certificate program is to um, help students understand and start to practice restorative justice in their minds, absolutely, and in our conversations, but also see how it works in the court system, in community organizations, in environmental justice contexts. So that's really our goal. And part of what we have in mind is flexibility, right? So we want students, interested folks like yourselves, to be able to pursue this certificate in a way that works for you. So we've designed it so that you can complete it within a year. You can start in August and you'll be done the following summer. But some folks, especially at Governor State, want to work on their own timeline, take things a little bit slower, and that's fine as well. You can do that. We've designed it so that you can take it alongside of a master's degree. So Patricia was talking earlier today about social work, absolutely. Public administration. We've actually been talking with our colleagues in English, in education, about building this certificate into the master's in education, not as a requirement, of course, because not everyone doing education would be interested, but as an option. And I'm excited to say that for master's students in criminal justice and master's students in political and social justice studies, for those two options, you can actually use the courses in the certificate towards their master's degrees as well. But you don't have to be enrolled in a master's degree program in order to pursue this certificate. Because it's a graduate certificate, you do have to have a bachelor's degree, but you can pursue this certificate entirely on its own or alongside of a master's degree if you want. And we've also built it so that it can be done primarily online. So that means it can work for students who are in our region, but also students who are internationally. But we also have very deliberate hybrid options so that in each year in January and February, we have a few in-person meetings. So we can have guest speakers, so we can have site visits with community partners around Chicago that are putting restorative justice into practice. So the certificate is primarily online. The fall semester is online. The summer semester is online. And then that spring semester, we have some in-person work, but then most of the work is done online to give students some flexibility. So this is like I said, this is a certificate that you could do within a single year. It takes 15 credits to earn this certificate, which is just a university way of saying 5 courses. Now we actually, just to get back to that point about flexibility, we've actually built it so there's a little bit of a range. So 15 credits to 18 credits, basically 5 or 6 courses. And we set it up that way so that if you need to take more classes in the summer in order to get financial aid, in order to qualify for financial aid, you have that flexibility. But let me talk about some of the core courses. So we have 4 courses, these 4 that you can see on the screen here, that are coming from criminal justice, political and social justice studies, philosophy, thinking about restorative justice principles, but also thinking about restorative justice practices. So we start off in the fall with some foundational courses. And then in the spring, we put this into practice. And then in the summer, we're encouraging folks and giving people the resources to start to put this, to apply this to their own communities, whether that's in Chicago or whether that's elsewhere in the world. So 4 required courses kind of spread out from the fall, spring, and the summer. And then you'd have your choice. This is the flexibility part. This is the elective part. Your choice of elective courses. Right now, we have 3 elective courses. And if you pursue the certificate, you would choose one of these or 2 if you want, right? So if you wanted to take a second course in the summer because you needed that for your financial aid, you could do that. You could take 2 electives, but you only have to take 1 in order to complete the certificate. So we have an elective course that's specifically about restorative justice in education, primary schools, secondary schools, but also universities and other educational systems. We have a course on putting this into practice in our communities, and also a course about thinking about restorative justice in environmental contexts. And by environmental context, I don't just mean plants and animals, so that they're important, but also in not environmental inequities, environmental injustices, environmental racism, for example, across different communities. So that's the core of our certificate. We've got some required courses and then some elective courses. And the idea is that by the time you get to the end of the summer semester, you will have completed the certificate and you could put it into practice. Now, if you are interested in applying, it's actually a pretty simple process. So at the bottom of the screen here, I've included the link, but it's basically apply.govstate.edu/apply. And when you go there, you'll see that you have some options. So since this is a graduate certificate, you'll actually click on graduate, right? And then when you do that, you'll pick restorative justice and you'll apply this program code. Now, I said before that because this is a graduate certificate, it does require that you already have completed your bachelor's degree. So right now, if you've already completed your bachelor's degree, like Patricia was saying, she earned her social work degree back in 2022, great. If you happen to be maybe in the last year of your bachelor's degree and you're interested in applying for the fall, you can definitely do that as well, as long as you've finished your degree by the time you start the program. And so what we're looking for is basically a very brief letter that explains your interest in the program. It can be as brief or detailed as you like, and then just one additional letter of recommendation from somebody who can speak to your interests and abilities. It could be a professor, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a coworker or a supervisor or even a community leader. Um, and because the program starts in August, we're asking folks to apply by June 1st so that we have plenty of time to work through your application to make sure everything's been successfully submitted. And so I would say think of June 1st as the deadline to submit by. Although if you have to get it in a few days later, that's okay. I would say the most important thing when it comes to all of this is please don't hesitate to reach out. I've got the email addresses and contact information for myself, for some of my colleagues like Jason Vignon and Joel Salm. I've got email addresses for these folks at the end. So when in doubt, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love it if you asked me a question about how to go through the process, because then you and I can work on it together. As I said, you don't have to be in a master's degree program to pursue this certificate. You can pursue it entirely on its own. But if you already are in the social work master's degree program, the criminal justice master's degree program, any other governor state graduate degree program, if you're already in that, you actually don't need to go through a formal application process. You can just contact your academic advisor and tell them that you're interested in adding the restorative justice certificate alongside of your degree. And depending on your program, the courses that you're taking in the restorative justice certificate might also contribute to that graduate program as well. We do have a little bit of flexibility. If you have already earned credits, if you've already maybe taken a course, a graduate course at another academic institution that would be relevant to the certificate, you could bring that with you as well. And last but not least, I know we've got folks here on the call who live near Governor State, who live in the Chicago area. That's fantastic. That's where I live. But we've also built this in such a way where if you're an international student, you can also participate. So as I mentioned before, the fall coursework is completely online. The summer coursework is online. It's only in the spring where we have hybrid courses, which means that they're partially online and partially in person. We've set them up intentionally this way to bring everybody together, folks who live nearby and the folks who live far away, to bring everyone together for about a month in January and February for on-campus meetings, for guest lectures, for site visits with community partners. And then the rest of the program is online again. And we've set it up this way so that if you are an international student, you don't have to come to Chicago for a year. You only need to come here and be with us in person for a few weeks. And because of that, you can complete the program with a J1 visa, which is a much simpler visa than some of the more complicated student visas. At this stage, I want to pause for a minute, and I want to ask my colleague, Jason Vignon. Jason, before I get to numbers, before I get to financials, so anything that you want to chime in, anything you maybe want to correct about what I said, or maybe complicate it a little bit?
No, I think everything is correct. I would say please get the applications in sooner than later, just so the faculty have enough time to do reviews and get you registered and everything. We try to always expedite everybody's application, but the closer we get to the summer start or to the August start, the more we have going on, the more financial aid has going on, the more every department has. So the longer you wait, the longer the process becomes. And I would just say on that visa and travel requirement part, the J1 visa shouldn't be as hard to get as the F1 visa is, but please be aware that you still are going to have to make an appointment with an embassy in your home country, and sometimes those can take a while. So if you apply and get admitted to the program now for August, I would immediately start looking for a visa slot so that you have your J set up, 6 months in advance and don't have to worry about it.
Jason, thank you so much. Uh, part of why
Mhm.
we part of why we built the course, the certificate this way is that you can start doing that coursework in the fall semester online. You can do that whether you live down the road or whether you live 3,000 miles away, and you've got time to get your paperwork in order. Um, so you don't have to have it in order by August 1st. But Jason's right. We built that in so that you can start sooner rather than
Right.
later.
Yeah, one thing I find working with international students is depending on the nation of origin, the wait time to get a visa appointment is some countries, India, some of the West African countries, you could be looking at a 4 to 6 month wait to get a visa appointment. If you're in Europe or some, Mexico, Canada, you're probably talking a few weeks, but some areas you could be looking at a few months. So just give yourself time if you are an international student.
Thanks, Jason. And just to draw attention again to what's at the bottom of the screen here, this has been on the last few slides, and this applies to everybody, whether you're an international student or whether you're a US-based student. When you do go to apply, make sure that you choose graduate program. So this is not non-degree seeking. Uh, you're going to pick graduate, and then you're going to pick restorative justice. Now there is a fee for this application, but for those who are participating in today's webinar, or if you're listening to this recording later, we'll actually waive the application fee for you. You just have to use the code that's on the screen, GSU_grad. You still apply, but then you don't have to pay the application fee.
Yeah,
Uh,
make sure it's in all caps. I did put it in the chat box as well.
Oh, great. Thank you, Stacy.
Yep.
Okay. Folks might be interested in about how much does this cost? This is a university certificate program, so it's college credit courses, graduate courses, and so the per credit fees are sort of the per credit tuition is what we would charge for our various courses all throughout the college. So it's not more or less than that. If you can look on the screen, you'll see that basically if you are a US based student, then we have a sort of a flat rate of tuition per credit, whether it's an in-person course, a hybrid course, or an online course, it's going to cost the same amount. In addition to that tuition, there's also fees. If you're an international student, the online course will actually be that same rate as for US-based students. And then the hybrid courses will be actually a little bit more. So those numbers that are right there in the middle of the screen, the per credit hour tuition, those numbers are firm. Those numbers are confident. I can be quite sure about that. In terms of the overall amount, in terms of how much this might cost you, I've figured out an estimate, and I'm feeling pretty good about this estimate, but it's based on not just the credit hour tuition, but also a variety of fees that we have at Governor State. And those fees are a little bit more, well, it's a collection of things, right? So the numbers that are on the left-hand column, the estimated total, that is an estimate. It's not an exact amount, but just gives you a rough sense about how much this program might cost if you're US based or if you're an international student. I will say, and Jason Vignon, who spoke before, was kind enough to include this. We have a little tuition calculator at the bottom of the screen there. There's a link. It's just govstate.edu/tuition. And you can actually use that to get a more precise number for yourself about how much these kinds of things would cost. I am happy to say that because this is an approved university graduate certificate, it's an approved program. So you can use financial aid for this program, just like you can for a bachelor's degree program or a master's degree program or any other program like that. Okay, I think that's a lot from me. I'm really excited to see what kind of questions and comments we have from everybody else. If you look here on my last slide, you can see here's my contact information. Also, Jason Vignon, who's the Director of Graduate Admissions and Retention here at Governor State. My colleague, Joelle Salm, who teaches restorative justice in the criminal justice program, and Robert Morley, who's the Director of International Services here at GSU.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. I'm going to stop the recording now. So anyone who has questions, feel free to add them to the